Coach Gainey had a couple of notable seniors leave last year, Igor, Chaz, Zakai, Jordan. How have you seen some of the guys that are still here kind of step into a leadership role in just the early days of practice?
We did lose a lot, and also in particular, like when you look at Zakai and Jemai, both here for 4 years, seen a lot, been through a lot, and really embodied everything about the culture, Coach Barnes, Enom, and everything. And so, like losing those two guys in particular, from a leadership standpoint, from a trust in the locker room standpoint, is a lot. And so I think it's a lot to ask those guys, anybody to step into that role, and so I think it's gonna be different. I think it'll feel different. I think, guys that are returning, Bishop, Cade, JP, those guys understand what we lost and where we got to get to. They all have their own way of leading. And so, I think it's up to, to them to try to, fill in those voids, and us to help them and coach them up in that area as well. But I think every guy's, they're trying in their own way to, and again, you got to be authentic with it too. You can't try to be Jemai, you can't try to be Z. You got to do it in your own way, and it'll take some adjustment, especially us as a staff getting used to the different type of leadership that it'll be. But those guys know what it's about. They've been through it, and so I think game experience is some of the things they're lacking. But they've been in those practices. They've been in those film sessions. They know what it feels like to be in a Elite Eight game, and so they know what we're trying to get to. And so they're trying. They're trying, and I think they've done a great job this summer. They just got to continue with it.
What are the challenges of getting Clarence up to speed now that he's here, and how do you do that quickly? And then with Ethan arriving a little bit later, how do you make sure that he's acclimated and ready once he arrives?
Yeah, no, both of those guys, we feel like a high IQ guys, and so I think they'll be able to pick some things up quicker. I think our entire staff, support staff included, do a great job of not only teaching on the court but off the court. So there'll be film sessions, there'll be individual workout sessions where it's not emphasized as much on shooting technique, but more so, okay, here are our offensive concepts. Here's this play we've been working on this summer. Here's some film on it. You got to watch it on video, and just kind of getting those guys up to speed as quick as we possibly can. And then, it also helps now you can practice earlier, with your whole team. So hey, next week we'll get going. We'll get going with it, and then when Ethan gets in, then we'll have to continue pick it up with him as well. But it will be it'll be a challenge. It'll be different for them because it is new terminology. It's also the language barrier part. You don't know how that'll play a part into it as well.
With Ethan being 22, does that make it a little bit different that he's a little more veteran, been around to handle that kind of transition?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think the age factor will help from a from an experience standpoint and being in different moments, but the learning curve, just different terminology, different styles of play. He's been in Europe, his entire career, so it's a different game when you come here. Whereas Clarence, he has been in the States. He was in the States for a couple of years before going back, so he may be able to adjust a little bit quicker, although he is younger. So, we'll see. I think his feel for the game and the IQ, some natural things should be able to take over once he gets in certain moments, but it still will be an adjustment.
You'll feel more comfortable about what Cade can do at the three than at the start of summer. And what do you kind of like about some of the possibilities and versatility that gives you?
Yeah, I think he's still growing. I think he's still growing in that space. I'm not going to sit here and say like he's, all of a sudden a straight three-man just after a few weeks in practice, right? But it has, shown us some different things defensively we can do. Like we always known he can guard 1 through 5, right, defensively. And so I think the offensive piece is, again, where he would have to make the biggest jump. And so it's been good to see him do some things this summer. And, he did hurt his shoulder and missed a few weeks. So I think that slowed down that development as well. But it'll be an ongoing process, ongoing development with him there. But having him being able to play that wing position will give us a little more depth there, but allow us to experiment with some jumbo-sized lineups. If you talk about moving Nate to the 2 and him at the 3, and then playing with 2 bigs inside, and just some different things we can do, and gives coach a lot of different versatility and things we can do.
You mentioned a little bit, but it's a brand new team, new dynamics, new roles, same culture though. What is one thing that's helping bring this team together that you've seen?
That's a good one. I would say, everybody came to Tennessee for a reason, and that was to win at a high level. And in all the recruitment that we talk to these guys about, like it's about achieving where we haven't gone before, going where we haven't gone before, and that's the Final Four. So I would say that the connecting factor with everybody is to win. Like how can we go further than the last 2 teams have gone, right? And that's it. And so as these guys are training and they're in practice and the dog days of practice, we make sure it's on the forefront of their mind that, hey, you got to see the big picture. And that's why they all came, because they all could have went different places, right? And whether it made more money or guaranteed more playing time, but they all understand how special a place Tennessee is, how good we've been, how great Coach Barnes is, and continue wanting to add to that legacy, of everything of Tennessee, of Coach Barnes.
We get to speak with Nate today. What has just impressed you most about him in these early days of practice?
He's an impressive young man. I think the biggest things that impress me is how cerebral, how smart he is, how quickly he picks things up, and how inquisitive he is. He asks a lot of questions, or say, "Oh, that's why we're doing this, because of this," and so he's impressive. He's very humble. Not a braggadocious, not a rah-rah in your face type of guy. But I knew that, as we recruited him, and that's why we felt like he'd be a great fit here for us. But the biggest thing that jumps off is just kind of the IQ, his mental capacity, and like to never really get rattled. So he's impressive in that way, for sure.
Kobe's a little bit more of a known commodity at the college level. Has there been anything about him as a person or a player that's surprised you all this summer?
It's funny because during the year you don't really get to watch a lot of other teams, and so but I did get to see him in some flashes and a couple games here and there, and I thought, man, he's good, and but when we got him, I was like, man, he's better than I thought he was going to be, from a basketball standpoint, from a just a person, as a teammate. The one thing I'd say, and that we talk to him a lot about, is being more vocal. Being getting outside of yourself in that capacity, because he's as good of a point guard as there is in the country. And the next step for him is going to be the communication piece, the talking piece, the leading, putting guys where they're supposed to be, and so that's next for him. But as far as his game goes, he's dynamic, man. He's a big time player and a great person, kind of like Nate, where he's humble and not a rah-rah type of in your face guy, but just appreciative of everything. He grew up a Tennessee guy, and he understands what it means to wear the jersey, and it's something he's always dreamt of, and that is just fun to see him living his dream and being here.
You mentioned that what's bringing everybody together is just the understanding of what Tennessee basketball is all about. Is it hard to get those new guys to that understanding, or were they kind of just picking it up as it came along?
Not really hard to get them to that understanding, because that's what they said they wanted. I think the tough part is understanding what it takes to get there, and not that they fight back, but it's a lot harder than maybe anticipated, a lot harder than they thought initially, and so that's probably the biggest adjustment, I would say, that they have to make. Well, we're not going to lower our standards. Coach Barnes isn't going to lower his standards. And look, you say this is what you want, this is what it takes. But the great thing about this group is they're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. So there's no pushback. There's no, it's an easier way to do it. Like, no, this is what it takes. All right, let's do it. All right. And again, I might not have gotten there today. Now that's motivation for me to try to get there tomorrow, next week, next month, to get to those standards.
When y'all get back to
Two
practice,
more, Mike, and then one after.
when y'all get back to practice here in a little bit, what are maybe the 2 or 3 things that you feel like the coaching staff has to learn or find out about this team the most?
Yeah, I think we're still just trying to. I think we got a good feel for who everybody is now. I think Coach has a great feel for who everybody is and what they do, strengths, weaknesses. I just think we got to continue to, from a defensive standpoint, keep growing there, and we want to try different things, different lineups. With some injuries late summer, we weren't able to probably do as much as we wanted, and so just getting that continuity with having everybody back, and understanding defensive concepts to a deeper level, that's going to be huge. And then offensively, just continuing to develop that inside game. And Coach, we are excited about JP being back, because we feel like he's a guy that is got a lot of upside, and then add Jalen in there, and it kind of gives us a different look, more depth inside. We got 2 guys in there now that we feel, along with Felix, he's really had a great summer. 3 guys in there, we feel like, man, can get some stuff done. And so just continue to develop in that, and then getting our transition game where we want to continue to get up and down and play really fast, and just let guys be who they are.
What was it about Clarence that you wanted to? What was it about Clarence that you wanted to bring him into the program?
I felt like he was versatile. He was different. He could play multiple positions, length, athleticism. He's kind of different than I'd say any of the other guards that we have. With size wise, with length wise, and then he can guard. He can guard. I think, and then he's a great kid. He's a great kid, and he's hungry, and he's determined to become a good basketball player. Now, I don't know how long it takes, with the transition and him missing this summer, but he's about the right things. I think he's going to do whatever this team needs him to do to help us win, but I think, to answer your question, just his, he was different. I'd say he's more athletic than any of the guards that we have. He brings a little more size at 6'6", in length, and then, just a versatile defender, at the guard position.
Thanks, Coach.